This morning, we're going to, in just a few minutes, have a conversation with Melinda. When I think about Melinda, there's a number of descriptors that come to mind, and I just want to share a few of those with you. There are words like wicked smart, strategic, innovative, risk-taking, and yes, demanding. She has very high expectations of us. But also there are words like collaborative, warm, passionate, approachable, a sense of humor, and a real deep commitment to you and the kind of work that you guys are out there doing and the courage and commitment with which you are undertaking it. But the thing that strikes me the most about her, I have lots and lots of stories I could tell, but the one thread that runs through all of my experiences with her the last 4 years is times in our agenda or our work where I would approach her with some trepidation, actually, or our co-chairs together with some trepidation with a new issue that we thought might have a little controversy or a new risk that we wanted them to take or something where we knew we were asking them to step out personally and in really powerful ways, but things that might not always be popular. And when Melinda every time looks me straight in the face with that direct look of hers and says, Vicki, of course we'll undertake that because it's the right thing to do. So please give a warm welcome to Melinda Gates. So Melinda, this group's been anxious to meet you.
Some of you I've met, which has been great on a lot of the being out in the various districts. It's been really wonderful.
So Melinda, you and Bill have been investing in education for almost 15 years now. Why did you choose to get involved and why do you stay involved? Because you often say to people that you're in this for the long haul.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important thing for people to know, that this is something we will be at for our lifetimes. Bill and I are invested in the education system because we think it is the crucial thing for the United States and hopefully a place that we can make a difference. And everything that I say, when I say we today, I'm talking about the foundation in partnership with people like you out in the districts, because everything that we do is in partnership. It's not something the foundation can do. I think one of the most important things, though, to understand about Bill and me is we really deeply believe that all lives have equal value. And we need to make sure, we would like to make sure with the Foundation's work that we give all lives, everybody, an equal chance. And we feel like we were incredibly lucky as kids to grow up and be born in the United States and to get a great education. And we feel like all kids ought to have that chance, and yet that's just not happening today in the United States. And so that's why we said the very bulk of our investments in the United States are going to be committed to education over the long haul.
So Melinda, we're on our side of the building and in this room sort of all education all the time. Yet we know that you spend a significant portion of your time on global health and global development issues, like trying to really stamp out the remainder of polio or eradicate malaria or make sure that people can come out of poverty and earn a living. How do you concentrate on such disparate issues?
Yeah, it's interesting because, again, when Bill and I said, okay, if we really believe that all lives have equal value, and we go to places like Bangladesh or India or places in Africa that we go often, you see that the thing people don't have in those countries is access to health to get started on their way. You can't even talk about a great education unless you have your health. And so that's how we decided to invest in health around the world. But in the United States, for the most part, it felt to us like people have a great chance at health, and that really education was the place that people don't have equal ability today to go on to college and a great career. And when we look at that and we take apart the problem in both health in places like Africa or education in the United States, it's that same sort of systematic thinking. And I think one misnomer about the foundation is people look at us with our over $30 billion of resources between, the resources that were amassed from Microsoft and Warren Buffett's wealth that's been pledged, and they think of it as this huge number. Okay, it's a huge number. But when you look at what we're trying to do around the globe, it is a tiny number. And everything that we do keeps in mind that the only thing a foundation can do, a philanthropic organization, is take on those catalytic problems. We can take on change in a way often that governments can't. They can't take the risky investment. They can't or won't necessarily do the deep research to answer the problem. But government's role, and if you think about the US education system, $600 billion, their role is to scale up and make the system work. So all a foundation can do is be that catalytic wedge to make sure that the government money is spent incredibly well. And that's how we think about our investments in the US education system.
So the big shift in the last 5 years at the foundation in the US program has been our really tight focus on teachers. Tell the group what sort of led us to that direction.
Well, I think, we all inherently have this feeling about what great teaching looks like. And I think as we traveled around in the United States, and as I traveled around in particular early on when Bill was working at Microsoft, we would go in these buildings and you could just see the light not in the kids' eyes. I went in buildings in LA and Boston and DC and Oakland, where you felt like you were driving up to a prison and no one was talking to the kids about going to college. And in fact, when you would talk to the kids about their aspirations, it was, things they'd been told they couldn't do. And yet, so we embarked on this education work thinking that it was the structure of the buildings in some way that needed to change, and also the curriculum and also the teaching. And as we got further into that work, we realized that it wasn't so much the structure of the building, it was absolutely the teacher at the front of the classroom, that person made the biggest difference in terms of whether that child stayed on the trajectory to learn what they needed to learn and had the opportunity then to go on to college. And so, as we saw great teaching around the United States in lots of these bad places that I'm discussing, places that were difficult, you'd see some not great teaching, but you'd see these lights, and you could see the lights go on with the kids. We kept saying, how is it that we can make sure the system supports and nurtures that great teaching for every single kid?
So the last few days we've been talking a lot about the MET results and the implications of that. And a few years ago when we started the MET project, there was not as much love for the conversation around teacher effectiveness that we hope we're experiencing now. And not just us, but all of our partners in the room. What made that project important enough for you to step out and really want to support it? And what have you learned so far from it?
So, you can have these feelings about what might work. So as I said, as Bill and I would go out and we'd see these classrooms and you'd see these great teachers, and we all knew from research that a great teacher makes a huge difference in the classroom. We kept saying to ourselves, but how do you know if you have a great teacher? Where's the research that says this is what makes systematically a great teacher? And it was surprising to us, quite frankly, that research hadn't been done, that we really couldn't measure how you get a great teacher and nurture and sustain them on in their professional development to make sure they're doing the very best at their craft. And so we embarked on this MET research for that exact reason. As we got into the research, we started asking even deeper questions about teaching than when we started the research. And I think one of the things when you're talking about change to understand is change is hard. Systems change is really hard and it's difficult. But I think if you have the research that backs it up so people know that this is based on real results and what can happen, and then you come out with, and here's the how to do it. I think one of the best things I hope that's come out of the MET research is the findings about great teaching and how to measure and evaluate great teaching, and that there isn't one way to do it. There are multiple ways to do it, and there are multiple measures that you have to do. I think we've had a lot of conversations, tricky conversations across the country about, is it all about the test score? Or, what else works? We know that it's multiple things, and I think the fact that there are ways to do that in different ways now in school buildings, depending on how you want to balance the peer observation with the principal feedback, with the test results, with the student surveys, the fact that there's multiple ways you can choose to go down those paths depending on your school district, that's one of the things I'm most proud about with the MET research.
So as you indicated, this is kind of complex, messy work. The larger education agenda, the work we're trying to do around teacher effectiveness, the collective we in this room. And this is a group that shares a set of aspirations with us about many, many more kids going to college, having a great career, or being really successful in their communities. What gives you confidence that we can achieve that ambitious goal?
Well, I think when you see what's going on across the country, when you see that so many states now have actually signed up to this core curriculum because we know it's something that will help get the great results we know we'll be teaching kids what they really need to learn. The fact we have that, the fact that you have momentum now, so many districts represented in this room who are saying we're signing up to great professional development and evaluation for our teachers, and that the teachers are with us in this, and they believe it can help push their craft on. I mean, teachers came into this for a reason because they believe in the kids and they believe in what they can do. And the fact that we will actually have a system that supports teachers in what they do, to me, that shows that it can actually be done. The other thing that I'll say is as you go out in the districts and talk to teachers who are working under these new evaluation systems, it's incredible what they say, and incredible how on fire they are about their craft. I've had so many teachers. I sat down with one in Memphis, Tennessee, and she was so excited to show me her MET video and to show me, what she'd learned about her craft of her own teaching. And she was a phenomenal teacher. But she sat there and she said, look at this, watch this, watch this. This is where I lost this student. And look how I lost this student over here. And I'm doing a pretty good job here, but look where the class is all kind of starting to glaze over. And she had changed her teaching. And then I sat with her and a group of 15 other teachers, and they talked about, yes, this is what we're sharing about learning about our practice. And when I see the teachers that excited about their careers and their potential of teaching kids in an even better way, that's when I know it can actually work.
So we feel really lucky that you and Bill spend time out in the field with us. And one of the things I'd like you to do is to tell this group why that's so important to you and what you learn out there that you can't learn sitting in the offices of Seattle with those of us kind of talking about the work, and a few of the stories, like you just did, of your experiences.
Well, so one of the most recent places Bill and I have been has been in Colorado, and the reason it's so important to get out and see the work is we read, believe me, we read all the data and all the big reports that come in, and you learn a lot from that, and you need that structure to understand whether what you're doing can really work at a systems level. But we both feel that if we don't get out and really talk to people in the districts, you really don't understand the work at a really deep level. So let me give you an example. In Colorado, we went out to Eagle Valley Schools, which is basically the Vail area. And to hear the stress the school system's under because of the state budget cuts, which everybody's going through across the nation, right? But to hear the trade-offs about how they were making decisions in their budget based on the fact that they already knew that evaluations and deep professional development made a difference. To hear how they were making those trade-offs and the differences they were seeing for students, hugely helpful for us to know that it actually works and that's how they think about it. We met both with the Denver leadership at many different levels. Again, hearing how Denver is taking it apart at a citywide level, how the mix of how they think about the problem, how they're getting different people to come along in that. Colorado has passed a new law around evaluation. It wasn't popular with everyone, as you could imagine. So to meet with the leadership who really as a community took that legislation on and pushed it forward, and to meet with some of the people who were opposed to the legislation and said to us, I completely opposed this in the beginning, but I'm getting on board and here's why. And then for us to even meet with people who are working down in the regions that are in the southern part of the state, again, very small school districts, and for them to have enough state money, they have to band together with the other districts in their region and thinking about how they're going to roll out an evaluation system. And so as part of all of that, meeting with all those levels, we also like to talk with the students and the teachers and the administrators. The students are always completely and totally honest. And so when we asked the students in one of the buildings about how the evaluation system had been rolled out already in their building prior, And we asked them, do they notice the difference? Students said, absolutely, we notice the difference. And particularly the seniors, right? Because they've lived in the old system and now they've lived in the new system. And we said, well, how does it show up? And they said, well, our teachers let us struggle more. And we said, struggle more, is that a good thing? And they said, definitely. They said, because when we struggle with our work, we know we're learning something. I met with another set of students where one of the students was going on and on about his amazing teacher and Mr. Knight, and he kept saying, he's the smartest person I know, he's the smartest person I know. Bill was sitting next to me and he kept grinning thinking, is he the smartest person he knows? And
he said he even might be the smartest person he'll ever know.
Exactly, and I said, good for you. And what he said about Mr. Knight is this student was very clear about where he struggled in his writing, and he gave us 3 back-to-back examples on the same writing piece. And he said, but he's the smartest person I know, and he will never give up on me. And that's what keeps you going in the work. That's when you see that incredible teaching and learning. I met a student last year in the LA school system, and I'd gone through his school with him. He'd helped tour me around the school most of the day, and I've been in and out of lots of classrooms. And he had told me, which I've known for quite some time, that in a lot of the good school districts and some of these charter schools, the teachers give the kids their phone numbers for at night if they need to call about homework or a struggle at night. And so this student said, you know, my teacher gave me her cell phone number. And I said, well, what does that say to you that they would do that? And he said, it means that if she's doing her part the way she's doing her part, I need to do my part in this. And I think that those stories are what keep you going even when the struggle gets hard in this work, because the work is hard.
So in that Colorado trip and in some other trips you've taken, you've also talked a lot to teachers, particularly how teachers are working with each other to spread good practice, like some of the literacy and math tools. So could you speak just a bit to that Colorado experience with teachers as well?
Sure. So, you know, when you talk about Common Core curriculum, it's not, you know, the most sexy topic that you talk about necessarily. It's kind of like, okay, Common Core curriculum, but you know it's the right things. And then you talk about curriculum tools. You kind of go, okay, well, maybe. You know, it's important, but all right. But then when you see the teachers on fire about a new curriculum tool, and they were so excited to have learned about these literacy and math design collaborative tools that they were using, and to talk to them about how they're changing their lessons and their teaching around these new curriculum tools, including letting kids struggle more, and then to see it in practice. We went into several of the classrooms, the math and the literature classrooms. You see how on fire the kids are, because the way they're learning literature is completely and totally engaging. So again, to be in the classroom and to see, and that's not, I mean, we'll talk about technology solutions, but that's a paper and pencil solution, but it changes the way teaching is. And that's when you think about the great teachers you had in high school and in grade school, it's the teachers that engage you in the learning, and that real curriculum that we know is helping kids learn is engaging the teachers back in the work, and it's engaging the students, and it's getting the outcomes then that kids are really learning that higher order thinking.
So, you know, at the foundation, we think of ourselves as impatient optimists, and you exude that, and you're so great at elevating and celebrating the work and really honoring teachers and kids. But, you know, sometimes you have to worry a little, and we'd love to know what keeps you up at night. What do you worry about in this work?
Well, sometimes I think the big thing, and I think, again, being out in the districts is really important, and I think this hit us, Bill and me, home when we went out to Hillsborough, Florida a few years ago, which is in this work, you have to go very methodically, and you have to be careful not to go too fast, and you also have to put the right resources behind it. If you go too fast, you know, when you're doing something hard, people have to come along. You have to give them time. So again, I was out in the LA school district last year, and a group of teachers who'd already been under a light evaluation system were undergoing already a more deep evaluation system. They totally believed in the principle. They totally believed in the evaluation system. But when they described their own angst about going through a new evaluation system, and these were great teachers, you understand that this is a human element. Anybody going under a new evaluation system in any corporation, in any school district, it's hard. So you have to give people time to absorb the change, time to understand that it's going to work for them, But you also have to do it in a methodical way, and you've got to invest in the resources. And so one of my big fears is that some of the districts will go too fast without investing a lot of money and time to do it right. So if you do it on the cheap and you try and do it just with, if you do it just with test scores and a super light evaluation system where you don't have good peer observers, or you don't give the principal enough time to do it well, particularly the first year when it's hardest, we can fail. And if that happens and people then say, this just doesn't work for me because it truly isn't working, that momentum can take hold across the United States, and we'll fail in this work. So it's important to go slowly, methodically, and with the right investments to make this work over time, and then to get the momentum in the districts as we're starting to see in many of the districts that you all have.
So one of the key values at the foundation is innovation, and in fact you have led the work on values at the foundation, and innovation in particular is one of the lenses that you and Bill sort of view the world through. What are you seeing out there in terms of education innovation that's really exciting to you and where you see momentum happening?
To see what's going on, I mean, again, going back to the Common Core standards, but then to see now, that was the whole idea with that, is that when we knew what really needed to be taught, the Common Core, that you then could get the technology innovators to come in against that Common Core because they knew where they were going, and you could open the market up to these great technological innovations. To me, to see the mix of technology in the classroom, Bill and I don't think, people sort of misread us and think, oh, because we're both from this computer science background, that we think everything's about technology. No, no, no. The way you teach in a classroom, you mix great technology that engages a student, that helps assess the student, that helps the teacher see where the student is. It's the mix of that with the blended classroom and the great teaching that goes on that really, I think, can propel and accelerate and keep students engaged. So some of the technology pieces that I see coming along, even some of the mundane, what I call mundane systems things in the background, we're going to be able to tag, and we are tagging, many people are, videos on the internet so you can easily go find the best lesson on fractions, and you have to search the whole internet. You can see these are 5 really great lessons on fractions that go against the Common Core. These are 5 really great lessons on that algebra piece that you're trying to teach. The fact that there's going to be a plethora of these fantastic lessons and videos with good assessments, and when you see it in play in places like Rocket Ship, and you see how it's just changing the school, that makes me really, really excited.
So we get a lot of praise and accolades, particularly for investing in great partners and partnership. But we also get our fair share of critique. How do you think about critique of the foundation and criticism, and what strikes you about that?
Yeah. So Bill and I follow the criticism very closely. Vicki makes sure we see all of it, even if it's a day we miss something. And I think the criticism is really important. And we follow it for a very specific reason, which is we don't have market feedback. If you're working in a company like Microsoft, you get product feedback immediately. You know whether people are buying your product, whether they like it, what features they dislike, they like, et cetera, and you know where you stand versus your competitor. You don't get that in this kind of work. So the criticism is really important because it makes us look at our own work and say, are they misreading us? Are we really not seeing this? Is there something we haven't thought of here? Is it something else that we're looking at it, but we're not looking at it in the same way the critics are, and so maybe we should go more deeply and we should ask our partners what they think. So we follow that criticism very, very closely. That said, the thing that I think is the most misunderstood right now about the foundation, and I hope we really can change over the next few years, is that we have never seen this work, ever, as us doing something to teachers. There is no way that is what we're about or how we think about this work. This will never get done if it's not something that teachers believe in and that they embrace and that they feel like they've had input to, and it's part of the work, and it's going to make teachers better. There's no reason for a teacher to adopt anything that we're talking about unless they feel that it will make them better in their craft of teaching. So everything I think about is in concert with Will teachers accept this, and are we listening and getting the voices of teachers in here? And so I think one of the things we need to do even with the foundation is elevate the voices of the teachers, and we've been trying to do that more the last couple of years. You know, there was early work that had to get done. The MET research had to be systematic. You know, it's taken us 3 years, and we've been very methodical about it. But I think as we were doing that, there became this misnomer of, oh, we were going to come up with some magic solution and tell teachers what to do. That was never the point. It was more about how do we get this great teaching to happen in more classrooms across the nation.
So we've been at this current strategy in the foundation for a few years, again with a lot of great partners, and we have learned a lot along the way and celebrated a few milestones. But as you said, we're in this for the long haul. As you look forward, what do you see? Where do you think we're headed next? And what are you excited about?
Yeah, you know, my dream is that this rolls across the nation, that this evaluation system really changes things in a way that we get deep professional development, and that we not only get professional development where you have that honest conversation between the principal and the peer observers and the teachers, but that we can actually even use some of the MET videos for people to look and see, wow, I could teach in that way, but that we also start to personalize professional development. I mean, I think the feedback that you give an algebra teacher is very different than the feedback sometimes that you give a teacher who's teaching literature. There's some things about it that are the same, but there are others that are different. And so as much as we can professionalize the development, because people are at different places in their career of teaching, they've been teaching things for different amounts of time. So when I think about that and having a system that supports great teachers, you know, the dream for Bill and me is that literally in every classroom around the United States, every kid has a fantastic teacher at the front of the classroom. Whether that child is going, you know, from math next to science, to art classes, to literature, to on to PE, that every teacher in the system is great. And I think it's going to take rolling momentum for this to happen across the country. But the reason we want that is because then every single student has the chance to go on to college and to go on to a professional career of his or her choosing. And when we early got into this work, and I really started to think about, and I travel the globe, and I think about coming back to the United States. I'm outside of the country a lot right now. And when I come back, the thing that I think about is how incredibly lucky we are, all of us, to live in this country with this democracy. And to me, an education system, every kid being educated in a way that they can participate in this democracy and participate in the really important discussions around constitutional rights, whether it's gun control, whether it's abortion rights, whether it's state spending. We need to make sure that every student is educated well enough that they can have the career they want and participate in our democracy. And so that's where I look to the education system.
So when you look a little further out, given the need to implement this as you've consistently pressed with quality, what do you predict, what do you hope for 5 years, 10 years from now?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the student piece, but what else would you like to see the system reflect?
I'd like to see the system reflect some of the best tools that are out there. I'd like to see way more great tools that engage kids in their learning. I'd like to see teachers really celebrated, and you know, we all know the great teacher we had or the great teachers that our kids have had, but to say this is a profession that so many people want to go into because they know they can be incredible at it for the students that they have. And I want to see that 80% of students are totally ready and qualified to go on to college, and that we're not putting kids back in remediation when they get in college and then losing them there, that we're getting them into colleges and they're getting messages about all those great colleges, like you see in some of the best reform districts that are going on. You know, when I walk through a KIPP school and you see today, you know, kids all talking about being college going, or I go into some of the great public schools and kids are talking about college, they have great college counseling and they know that they're on their way, I know that we're on our way in this. And I think one of my favorite things coming out of Colorado was a teacher caught me aside right at the end of the trip, And he said to me, you know, what I love about this work is I love that we're doing this together. And to me, we're doing this together as a nation. When you look at all the pieces that are adding up to make this happen, to make this momentum happen from race to the top to the others. And Bill and I have a little saying that we use in our own marriage. You know, sometimes things can get tough, right? You kind of, a little bit of grist between you on anything. And one of the times we had a little grist, I'll tell a story, we were driving somewhere in our car to go downtown. I didn't grow up in Seattle, Bill grew up in Seattle, right? So he probably knows his way around Seattle pretty well, but I was a little frustrated, we were running late, and I'm telling him how to get here and get there and get off on the next exit. And we're in this tiny little